At my niece's birthday party, my sister handed me a slice of cake and said, "Buying stuff doesn't make you special. You're just the family wallet." Her husband laughed. My dad just muttered, "Let it go." I'd covered every bill, paid for every emergency, even covered her school tuition last week. So I set the cake down, grabbed the envelope off the gift table, and said, "Good luck covering next semester." I just canceled the payment. Then I walked out, and her husband started panicking. I, 32M, stood in my sister's living room, watching my 7-year-old niece tear through wrapping paper with the kind of unbridled joy that only kids can manage. The party was in full swing. Balloons everywhere, kids running around screaming, and the usual chaos that comes with family gatherings. I'd shown up with what I thought was a thoughtful gift, a high-end art set that cost me nearly $300. My niece loved to draw, and I figured she deserved something special for her birthday. That's when my sister approached me with a paper plate, a slice of chocolate cake balanced precariously on top. She had that look in her eyes, the one I'd seen countless times before when she was about to say something cutting. Her husband stood behind her, already smirking like he was in on some private joke. She handed me the cake and delivered the line that would change everything between us. She told me that buying stuff didn't make me special, that I was just the family wallet. Her husband burst out laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I looked around the room, hoping for some support, some acknowledgement that what she'd said was completely out of line. My dad was sitting in his usual spot on the couch, and when our eyes met, he just shrugged and told me to let it go. Just like always. The cake felt heavy in my hands as I processed what had just happened. Here I was, at my niece's birthday party, being humiliated by the very people I'd been supporting financially for years. The same sister whose tuition I'd just covered the week before. The same family whose bills I'd been paying without complaint. I set the cake down on the nearest table and walked over to where the gifts were piled up. Among them was a white envelope with my niece's name written in my careful handwriting. Inside wasn't just a card. It was a payment confirmation for my sister's fall semester tuition. $15,000 that I'd transferred just 7 days earlier. I picked up the envelope and turned back to face my sister and her husband. The smug expressions were still plastered across their faces, like they were waiting for me to slink away with my tail between my legs like I always did. Instead, I told them they'd better figure out how to cover next semester because I'd just canceled the payment. Then I walked out. The silence behind me was deafening for about 3 seconds before chaos erupted. I could hear my brother-in-law's voice rising in panic, my sister starting to stammer, and my dad telling everyone to calm down. But I was already at my car, pulling out of the driveway while my phone started buzzing with incoming calls. Update 1. The drive home gave me time to think about how we'd gotten to this point. It hadn't always been this way. Growing up, my sister and I were close. She was 3 years younger, and I'd always felt protective of her. When she decided to go back to school for her master's degree at 28, I was the first person to offer help. Her husband had been laid off 6 months earlier, and they were struggling to make ends meet even with her part-time job. When she mentioned dropping out because they couldn't afford the tuition, I stepped in without hesitation. Family helps family, right? That was 2 years ago. Since then, I'd covered not just her tuition but their mortgage payments when money was tight, their car repairs, emergency medical bills, and countless other expenses. I kept a running total in my head. We were approaching $60,000, and that didn't include all the smaller stuff I'd stopped counting. My phone kept ringing during the drive home. First my sister, then my brother-in-law, then my dad. I let them all go to voicemail. I needed space to process what had just happened and figure out my next move. When I finally got home, I sat down at my computer and started going through my financial records. Every payment, every transfer, every time I'd bailed them out, it was all documented. I'd kept meticulous records without really thinking about why. Maybe some part of me knew this day would come. The payment I'd mentioned canceling was real. I'd set up the tuition payment through my bank's bill pay system, and it wasn't scheduled to process until Monday morning. A quick phone call to my bank's after-hours line, and it was canceled. Just like that, $15,000 stayed in my account instead of going to my sister's education. I finally listened to the voicemails around midnight. My sister's first message was angry, accusing me of overreacting and being dramatic. Her second message, left about an hour later, had a different tone entirely. She was practically begging me to call her back, saying we needed to talk. My brother-in-law's messages were pure panic. He kept repeating that they needed the money, that her graduation was only 8 months away, that they couldn't afford to lose momentum now. He promised they'd figure out a payment plan, that they'd pay me back somehow. My dad's message was exactly what I expected. He told me I was being stubborn and that family shouldn't keep score like this. He said my sister was upset and that I should be the bigger person and call her back. I deleted all the messages and went to bed. Update 2. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was having coffee on my back patio when I heard the doorbell ring. Through the peephole, I could see my sister standing on my front porch, looking like she hadn't slept much. She was alone, no husband, no kids. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. She asked if we could talk, and I told her we could do it right there on the porch. She started to apologize, saying she'd been stressed about money and took it out on me unfairly. She claimed she didn't really mean what she'd said about me being the family wallet. I let her finish her rehearsed speech, then asked her a simple question. If she didn't mean it, why did her husband think it was so funny? Why did everyone just expect me to take it and move on? She didn't have an answer for that. I told her about the spreadsheet I'd been keeping, every payment, every bailout, every time I'd rescued them from their poor financial decisions. The number had reached $63,000 over 2 years. I told her I was done being the family ATM. Her demeanor changed completely. The fake apology disappeared, and the real her came out. She said I'd been holding money over their heads this whole time, that I'd made them feel like they owed me something. She accused me of keeping score to make myself feel superior. I laughed. Actually laughed, because she was describing exactly what she'd been doing to me for years. Making me feel guilty for having been more successful, for being able to help when they needed it, for not struggling the way they were. I told her the tuition payment was permanently canceled and that she should start looking for student loans or scholarships if she wanted to finish her degree. Then I went back inside and locked the door. She stood on my porch for another 10 minutes, alternating between knocking and yelling through the door. She threatened to bring the kids over to make me feel guilty, said I was breaking up the family, claimed I was being selfish and petty. I turned up the music and waited for her to leave. Update 3. Monday brought the consequences. My sister called the university's financial aid office and discovered that without my payment, her enrollment would be suspended within the week. She'd need to either pay the full amount or set up a payment plan with a hefty penalty fee. My brother-in-law, meanwhile, had apparently spent the weekend trying to figure out their finances. He called me Tuesday morning, and his tone was completely different from his panic-stricken voicemails. He admitted they'd gotten too comfortable relying on my help and had made some poor decisions assuming I'd always be there to bail them out. They bought a bigger house than they could afford, leased expensive cars, and lived beyond their means because they knew I'd cover the important stuff like education and emergencies. He said they'd never actually calculated how much I'd been contributing to their lifestyle until now. He offered to set up a payment plan to pay me back everything they owed, but I told him that wasn't what this was about. This was about respect, about being treated like family instead of like a bank. My dad called Wednesday evening. He'd apparently spent some time thinking about what I'd said, and maybe my sister had filled him in on just how much money we were talking about. His tone was more measured, less dismissive than usual. He admitted he hadn't realized the extent of my financial support or how my sister and her husband had been treating me. He said he'd always assumed I offered help because I wanted to, not because they'd started expecting it. He asked what it would take to fix things. I told him the same thing I'd told my brother-in-law. This wasn't about the money. It was about being treated with basic respect and appreciation instead of being taken for granted. The breaking point came Thursday evening. My sister showed up at my office as I was leaving work. She'd been crying, and she looked desperate. She begged me to reconsider, saying she was so close to graduating and couldn't afford to stop now. I asked her why she thought I should help someone who publicly humiliated me and showed me zero respect. She said she was sorry, that she'd been stressed, and said something stupid. I told her that what she'd said wasn't something stupid. It was how she really felt about me. She saw me as a wallet with legs, someone whose only value to the family was my ability to pay for things. And her husband's laughter proved he felt the same way. She broke down completely then, admitting that somewhere along the way, they'd started seeing my help as something they deserved rather than something I chose to give. She said they'd gotten spoiled and entitled, and she understood why I was angry. But understanding and changing are two different things. Update 4. It's been 3 weeks since the birthday party incident. and the family dynamic has shifted completely. My sister ended up taking out emergency student loans at a much higher interest rate to cover her tuition. The stress of suddenly having to manage their finances without my safety net has forced some hard conversations in their household. My brother-in-law found a new job, not in his preferred field, but something that pays the bills. They're looking at downsizing their house and getting rid of the expensive car leases. For the first time in years, they're living within their actual means instead of their means plus my contributions. My dad has been trying to play mediator, but I've made it clear that this isn't about forgiveness or apologies anymore. It's about a fundamental shift in how I'm treated and valued within the family structure. The most interesting development came last weekend. My niece, the birthday girl who started all of this, asked her mom why uncle wasn't coming around anymore. When my sister tried to give her some sanitized explanation about adults having disagreements, my niece apparently asked why mommy had been so mean to me at her party. Kids notice everything, and my 7-year-old niece had picked up on the disrespect in her mother's tone, even if she didn't understand the full context. My sister was forced to have a conversation with her daughter about treating people kindly, especially people who do nice things for you. That conversation apparently hit harder than any of our arguments had. My sister called me after that, not to ask for money or even to apologize again, but to tell me about her conversation with her daughter. She said having to explain to a 7-year-old why she'd been cruel to someone who'd been nothing but generous to their family made her realize how far she'd fallen from who she used to be. I listened to what she had to say, but I didn't commit to anything. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And respect, once lost, has to be earned back through actions, not words. Update 5. 2 months have passed since what my family now refers to as the birthday party incident. The changes in everyone's behavior have been gradual but noticeable. My sister completed her fall semester using the emergency loans, but the financial pressure has been intense. She's had to take on additional part-time work while studying, something she hadn't had to worry about when I was covering her expenses. Her husband's new job pays less than his previous one, but the steady income has forced them to budget more carefully than they ever had before. The most significant change came when they put their house on the market. They found a smaller place that fits their actual budget, and the equity from the sale will help them pay down some debt. It's a tangible acknowledgement that their lifestyle had been artificially inflated by my financial support. My dad visited me last weekend, something he rarely did before all of this happened. We talked about family dynamics and how patterns develop over time without anyone really noticing. He admitted that he'd gotten used to me being the family problem solver and had stopped seeing it as the generous gesture it was meant to be. He also shared something that surprised me. Apparently, my sister had been bragging to her friends about having a brother who was successful and always willing to help out. What she'd framed as pride in our relationship was actually her using my generosity as a status symbol. The family wallet comment had been brewing for a while. It just took a public moment for it to come out. My niece sent me a handmade card through my dad. In her careful 7-year-old handwriting, she'd written that she was sorry her birthday party made me sad and that she missed me. She'd drawn a picture of us together, with her holding my hand. Kids have a way of cutting through all the adult complexity and getting to the heart of things. Update 6. The holidays provided the ultimate test of whether anything had really changed. Thanksgiving was awkward but civil. Christmas was where I saw the real proof that my family was learning to function differently. For the first time in years, I didn't receive a list of what everyone wanted or needed. No hints about expensive gifts that would solve someone's financial problems. My sister gave me a gift she'd made herself, a photo album of family memories with handwritten notes about what each moment meant to her. More importantly, I watched her interact with other family members. When our cousin mentioned struggling with car repairs, my sister offered emotional support and practical advice, but didn't immediately suggest that someone else, meaning me, should help financially. It was a small thing, but it showed that she was learning to see family relationships as more than financial transactions. My brother-in-law has been different too. He stopped making jokes about my success or comments about how nice it must be to have money. Instead, he's been asking genuine questions about my career and sharing his own professional goals. For the first time, I feel like he sees me as a person rather than a resource. The conversation I'd been dreading finally happened on New Year's Eve. My sister asked if we could talk privately, and I thought she was going to ask for money again. Instead, She wanted to discuss what our relationship could look like going forward. She acknowledged that they'd become dependent on my help in ways that weren't healthy for anyone involved. She said she wanted to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect rather than financial necessity. She even offered to draw up a formal repayment plan for what they owed, though I told her that wasn't necessary. What was necessary was the acknowledgement that I'm a person with feelings, not just someone who exists to solve their problems. Final update. It's been 6 months since the birthday party that changed everything. My sister graduated with her master's degree last week, having completed it entirely through student loans and her own hard work. The pride in her accomplishment felt different this time. It was hers, not something I'd enabled. Her graduation party was a small, family affair. When she gave her speech thanking everyone for their support, she specifically mentioned how the challenges of the past year had taught her the value of both independence and genuine appreciation for help when it's offered. She's found a position in her field that pays well enough to start tackling those student loans. Her husband's career has stabilized, and they've settled into their smaller house. They seem genuinely happier living within their means, though I know the adjustment period was difficult. My relationship with my niece has fully recovered. I've been careful to maintain boundaries. I still buy her nice gifts, but I'm not the only family member contributing to her college fund anymore. She's learning that multiple people can show love and support, not just one designated family provider. The most unexpected outcome has been how this situation changed my own perspective. I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd fallen into the habit of using money to maintain relationships and avoid difficult conversations. Being generous felt safer than being vulnerable. But real relationships require both people to show up authentically, not just financially. My family learned to function without my constant financial intervention, and I learned to set boundaries without feeling guilty about it. We're all better for it. The envelope I grabbed from the gift table that day contained more than just a payment confirmation. It contained a boundary that needed to be set. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's disrespectful behavior, even when they're family. Especially when they're family. My sister and I talk regularly now, but our conversations are about life, dreams, struggles, and successes, not about money. Her husband has become someone I actually enjoy spending time with. My dad has gained a new appreciation for what healthy family boundaries look like. And my niece? She's learned that people should be valued for who they are, not what they can provide. That might be the most important lesson to come out of this whole situation. The family wallet is closed, but the family itself is stronger than it's been in years.